Before you click off this video, I'd like to start by saying that if you're familiar with my content, then obviously you're wondering what this video is. This is a love letter to Portal. And if you are familiar with what I make, then you know that I'm not the type of person to write a legitimate retrospective or review about a beloved franchise. Except today that is exactly what I'm going to do. But I'm not gonna bullshit you or say anything along the lines of, did you know Portal was created by 12 Mongolian monks? This is not an epic game review. This video purely exists so that I can express the genuine beauty and genius that is the Portal franchise.
Things have changed since the last time you left the building. What's going on out there will make you wish you were back in here. I have an infinite capacity for knowledge, and even I'm not sure what's going on outside. All I know is I'm the only thing standing between us and them. Well,
Mr. Johnson, I don't want this. I don't want this.
Alright, test's over. You can head on back to your desk.
Portal needs no introduction. It's a puzzle game franchise that made its mark on the game industry through its unmatched atmosphere, incredible level design, and extremely well-written story and dialogue. In the year 2023, it's sort of Valve's golden child, often being used for tech demos like The Lab or Aperture Desk Job. It also happens to be one of my favorite franchises of all time, and there is one key reason for that: the loneliness. The first time I played the original Portal, I wasn't even 5 years old. That might sound silly. Portal was one of the first, if not the first video game I ever played. Even back then, as a young child, I could never shake the feeling that that was a terrifying experience to play Portal. And that's probably due to the design of the original game. Portal 2, of course, has many points where you can see the vastness of Aperture Science. I mean, it even shows this and a huge ray of sunlight at the very start of the game when Wheatley is rescuing you from the relaxation chamber. But in the original game, there's nothing like this whatsoever. You truly are just in these small black and white rooms with nothing else. The Portal franchise excels at making you feel utterly alone, which it accomplishes with the fact that, well, you are alone. The first Portal is extremely direct about this fact, and it does not hide that you are the only living thing in this entire facility. There's no sunlight, and there's seemingly no exit to the outside, which is a very non-human trait. However, every test chamber contains numerous observation rooms, which does give them a quote-unquote human touch. Of course, they are completely unoccupied, and in the later part of the game, when you finally escape the chambers, you can see the remnants of the past people who resided there, like monitors that are still on and clipboards indicating test subject progress. The sterile environment of Portal further supports this. The fluorescent lights in completely white or black test chambers give off a strong sense of isolation, and even claustrophobia. There's no sunlight, there's no life or organic matter, and really no hope at all. There are, of course, the Ratman dens present throughout the game that give the player an insight into what happened to the facility and the people that worked in it. And unlike the test chambers, they're dirty, decrepit, but also full of life, as indicated by the food and bedding. Somebody did live here, but obviously out of the prying eyes of GLaDOS. If you're familiar with my content, then you know I am a huge fan of the content that Valve develops. This is probably why. I can remember my first experience with Source Engine Physics was playing with the props present in the Ratman dens in the original Portal. That, and the isolation that the game provided, is an impression that lives with me to this day. As somebody who now files taxes, has a driver's license, I have never played a game that manages to give off the sense of loneliness that Portal does. What makes it more remarkable is how subtle and simple the game accomplishes this. Sure, survival games always attempt to create a sense of loneliness, and while most of them tend to accomplish this in one way or another, they have life like plants and creatures and of course, sunlight. One of the few franchises that actually can compete with Portal's desolation is the Metro franchise. Dark, decrepit, and hopeless. Your only friend is a psychotic AI who knows and intends that you will die at the end of the testing course. Just a little bit of a minor addition and a shout out I want to make here. Earlier you probably noticed the background track being Self-Esteem Fund, which is also now playing in the background again. A major aspect of Portal, especially the first one, is the soundtrack composed by Kelly Bailey and Mike Muraski. Self-Esteem Fund is the track that made me realize this feeling of loneliness and isolation in Portal, even back then when I was just a kid. It's a track that has such emotion and feeling, even though it has no lyrics whatsoever, and I've never played a game that gives off the same feeling. So just a little bit of a shout out. Anyways, back to the main video. Portal 2 dispels this theme quite quickly when the game starts. Sure, you are the only human present in the game, but unlike the first, there's plenty of life like plants, birds, and even vegetables like potatoes. Many times throughout the game you can even see sunlight, which shows how the second game managed to bear a much brighter tone, sometimes quite literally. This is further supported by characters like Wheatley, as well as vastly increased dialogue from GLaDOS and the comedic writing that accompanies it.
Look at you, sailing through the air majestically, like an eagle, piloting a blimp.
Except, this is very much a facade, as the latter half of the game introduces Old Aperture, a decrepit and ruined husk of the dreams of Cave Johnson.
That's crap.
This is one of gaming's most effective and well put together atmospheres. There really is no setting like it. An abandoned salt mine turned into an asbestos constructed testing facility sounds almost comical, yet it gives off a feeling of failure and genuine loneliness. This is an environment that is first introduced in Portal 2's Chapter 6, The Fall. The first indication of an extension of Aperture Science is the fact that there are meter markers indicating a total depth of around 2.718 miles. That's a depth 8 times deeper than the One World Trade Center in New York City.
This place is huge, and we're only seeing the top layer. It goes down for miles.
Old Aperture has a vibe that one might call immaculate. Well, maybe immaculate isn't the correct word, given it is a facility made largely of asbestos and is more than 2 miles underground, but you get what I'm saying. One of the most fascinating aspects of Old Aperture is how it is very much a place that people do not want you to go to. There's blocked off doors and probably millions upon millions of condemned signs. And unlike the modern enrichment center, it's also the exact opposite of sterile. It's dirty, it's old, but somehow it's less depressing than the original game's atmosphere. On the other hand, it's kind of scary. One of the first things you come across in the underground is an enormous cavern that is seemingly flooded, as some of the testing spheres are partially submerged in water. One of Portal 2's most famous concept art pieces even shows this in great detail. As you make your way higher up and through the testing track, you're accompanied by old recordings of a highly charismatic and quite comedic Cave Johnson.
Good news is, we've got a much better test for you. Fighting an army of mantis men. Pick up a rifle and follow the yellow line. You'll know when the test starts.
But as you continue and near the end of the testing tracks, the newer the recordings become, but also the older Cave Johnson becomes.
Thank you. I can't believe I'm thanking these people. For staggering your way through Aperture Science's propulsion gel testing, you've made some real contributions to society for a change, and for that, humanity is grateful.
Near the end of his recordings, you are quite literally hearing him dying due to exposure to moon rocks, which itself is equally hilarious, but also extremely depressing.
The bean counters told me we literally could not afford to buy $7 worth of moon rocks, much less 70 million. Bought them anyway, ground them up, mixed them into a gel. And guess what? Ground up moon rocks are pure poison. I am deathly ill.
It's worth mentioning that Cave Johnson's final recordings even have his dying wish of having his assistant Carolyn being turned into a literal computer, which of course is GLaDOS, that can essentially live forever.
If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her.
It's phenomenal world building, but also, it didn't really register in my mind until writing this about how utterly fucked that is as an idea. And Valve obviously knew that this was a really messed up concept given these famous cut audio lines.
Mr. Johnson, I don't want this. I don't want this. No, listen to me. Sir, I do not want this.
Here's another minor addition. One thing I will make a note of about these cut lines, if J.K. Simmons actually recorded lines as part of this conversation, they are not able to be found. There was actually a strong rumor that J.K. Simmons refused to actually record these lines because he believed it sounded too much like a rape scene. However, this would turn out to be false, as Portal 2 writer Eric Wolpaw said in an interview, quote, "But that, the rumor, is absolutely not true." Just some clarification.
Are you serious?
After leaving the underground, you're reintroduced back into the clean, sterile environment that is Aperture Laboratories. While I've mentioned that this atmosphere gives off a sense of isolation, the Portal 2 atmosphere specifically is extremely well done. The self-sufficiency and completely modular nature of the facility is just straight up cool. For example, the panels, which Valve even made a promotional video for, build and reconstruct the entire facility. This, alongside places like the turret manufacturing hub, the pneumatic diversity vent system, and the panel construction plant, makes Portal 2 feel so alive. And then, my favorite thing, the original teaser trailer for Portal 2. As someone who literally grew up with this franchise, seeing the Portal 2 trailer was an experience that was literally just fantastic. I rewatched it again for this video after not having seen it in years, and it made me so hyped for a game that's been out for over a decade. It is so unironically epic. I remember when I wasn't even 10 years old and my brother showed me the trailer on YouTube, and it was just a magical experience. Just the feeling and excitement that came with this trailer is something I've literally never experienced since, besides Half-Life Alyx. It's just so cool. Come on, make Half-Life 3, guys. You know it's time. But until that time comes, we at least have a franchise that, despite not having a new full-length game in over a decade, still feels like it could come out today. It's aged fantastically, and if anything, that's not just praise on Portal's part, but also Valve as a game company. They've managed to create not just one or two, but several classics like TF2, Half-Life 2, Counter-Strike, and of course, Portal. If any of this resonated with you, I'm curious about your thoughts. Feel free to leave a comment, and if you like this video and want to check out some of my other content and stay up to date with all my uploads, consider subscribing. Just make sure you have push notifications enabled so you know the exact millisecond a new video drops. And don't worry, these videos are never half-baked, like Cave Johnson says.
We're not going to release this stuff into the wild until it's good and damn ready, so as long as you keep yourself in top physical form, there'll always be a limo waiting for you. Say goodbye, Carolyn.
Goodbye, Carolyn.